Hi, I'm Chanel, one of the journalists at Manx Radio. Welcome to the latest edition of Manx Radio Newscast.
My name is Paul Corteen. I'm the commercial manager at Middle Park Recycling and Middle Park Metals.
Right now, I understand Middle Park Recycling and Middle Park Metals is the company that got the tender for the WEEE items. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, the DOI Waste Management sent out a set of tender documents prior to Christmas. So that was a normal tendering process. In this instance, for the collection of waste electrical products, including cooling, i.e. fridges and freezers, TVs, monitors, computers. But added into that on this occasion was the dealing with small WEEE, additionally to what has been dealt with historically at civic community sites. So toasters, microwaves, hair dryers and hoovers and all those sort of products and commodities. So we tendered for that before Christmas. That then went through a due diligence process and we were ultimately awarded it just prior to Christmas.
Right. Now, I understand there's been lots of talk going on at the moment around fly tipping, around the pricing of these WEEE stuff and the amenity sites. And I understand that there's some stuff that you'd like to address, some misinformation that's going out.
Well, it's to do with there's been a change in the enforcement in relation to WEEE, which is waste electrical and electronic equipment. It's globally referred to as WEEE. I think as a Manx nation, we're well versed in the requirement to dispose of cooling equipment, i.e., as I say, fridges and freezers, responsibly because of the gases and the potential environmental impact that they can have if they're disposed of irresponsibly. And they're the sort of things that historically people have taken to the civic community sites. They're educated to know that there's a fee to be paid because there is a cost for safe disposal and processing of those products. That's similar with TVs and monitors and these sort of items as well. So they've historically been separated out of the waste stream and dealt with in an environmentally sensitive manner. What's happened more recently is between the UK and therefore an impact over here is the small WEEE and large domestic WEEE is now being dealt with slightly differently in terms of enforcement, which means out of the general waste streams and dealt with more appropriately. So that is what is a cost. So whereas before you may have gone to the civic community site and disposed of a Dyson Hoover, for example, free of charge, there is now a potential cost implication for that because it's come out of that waste stream and go into a slightly different separate waste stream, which in itself then creates a cost for the disposal of that. And that's really where the change in circumstances come in. It's not because somebody sat here and dreamt it up on the island. It's reactionary to requirements in the UK to broaden the net really on what is done sensibly and environmentally sensitively and which is auditable and traceable, etc. And that's really where these additional costs have come in. There are increases in costs on the cooling disposal. That was part of the tendering process. As you may well imagine, the cost of shipping, fuel surcharges, minimum wage, all of these things have an impact on the cost of collection, bulking up, and transport and ultimate disposal of these items. And that's where some of those gate fees for disposal of fridges, freezers, etc., have increased. Similarly, one or two other items, some items have decreased in cost at the front end, but also there are these requirements to separate out other WEEE, small WEEE, large domestic WEEE, which that is deriving costs that the public isn't necessarily used to or familiar with having to pay.
Right. So as you said, then all these costs came in because of the change in the UK or us adopting that we.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Which this doesn't have an impact on our normal domestic household waste. It certainly has no impact on things like settees and all of the non-electrical. It's a simple bracket. If it's non-electrical, it's not impacted by these changes whatsoever. that can still go through the normal waste processing at the civic community sites, which covers furniture, beds, etc., etc. All of that can still be disposed of in exactly the same manner as has been the case historically. It's only items that are electric that are covered by this. So there's not really any reason for this to have encouraged somebody to dispose of a settee somewhere over the back of a hedge, because this has nothing to do with that whatsoever.
Has you or your company now received flack from members of the public around these pricing or the pricing increases? Because I know earlier in the week I had the DOI saying that all they do is put the tender, they don't set the prices. And then we had one amenity site on the island saying this is what we're charged at to get rid per ton. Have you then sort of seen backlash on your side?
We haven't seen it at the rock face, as it were. We're not particularly involved in social media, but certainly there's been various comments made. People don't like to pay costs for things. It's another form of taxation, arguably. The reality of it is we're well used to disposing of fridges and freezers, etc., responsibly, and have been educated to know that there is a fee and a cost involved in that, because there is a cost all the way through the process of disposing of that. Those items don't carry a net worth or value, as it were, so there is a cost to doing that. Some of these other items, which were going into the general waste stream, they're not supposed to go into the general waste stream, and that's where the enforcement and the requirement for those to be taken out has come in. So it's more a case perhaps of education as opposed to this being dreamt up or profiteering or this type of angle. It isn't. It's reactionary to a requirement for it to be taken out of the general waste stream to be dealt with in a slightly different way, which ultimately means there is a potential cost to dealing with it in this slightly different way. The absolute truth of it is some of the costs for that are still to be ironed out, because statistically the island, for example, has very little data on small WEEE and how much is produced, because it didn't used to be separated out. So the actual final cost for dealing with that small WEEE is a little bit of an unknown at this stage, because that data isn't known. So until we start properly separating it out, dealing with it in the responsible way that is now required, those final costs are still to be determined. But they may be less than has been indicated initially, but there is some legwork to be done, really, to process those items to then see exactly where it sits as a cost. The cost on the island is always that the bulk cost is in the shipping of all of these commodities, and that's where a significant proportion of the fees that are being charged effectively by the civic community sites comes from. A large part of the fees that we charge are made up of shipping costs. There's disposal costs at the other end, and obviously at the front end, at this end on the island, there are the collection costs and the processing and bulking up, and then ultimately shipping costs.
Thank you so much. Thank you for putting it that way, because that it gives it such a nice, well-rounded, it explains the process. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. And I like what you said about education, educating people and letting them know this is what it is, instead of just going, oh, it's someone profiteering or it's someone just trying to make money. Like you said, education. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the recycling market and the world of recycling, it evolves, it changes, it's bound to, the same as any other process and any other industry does. What is beneficial to recycle or process today might not be beneficial to reprocess or recycle tomorrow. A good case in point was the bring bank paper, which historically was positive in value. It was positive for the environment, but ultimately the cost of collecting it and the emissions brought about locally by driving around and collecting all of that paper, that was actually being outweighed by the benefit to the environment, which is ultimately why the government have taken the decision to stop the bring bank paper recycling, because in global terms it wasn't a benefit to us either financially or environmentally. So that's why that decision was made, and that's why that's changed. So it's not It's not a one size fits all. It's not fixed and permanent forever, because things do change and things do evolve. And paper would be perhaps a good example of that.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Manx Radio Newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.